Okay, we will kind of go ahead and get started. I am Sunny Browse. I'm from Hico, Texas. I was diagnosed with ALS in January of 2015. And welcome and thank you for joining us for the second annual Fight ALS Film Fest. Tonight is going to be an amazing conversation. I will let our panelists introduce themselves here in just a second. But a couple of housekeeping. We want to keep this a collaborative and safe space. So please keep that in mind during conversations. Also know that we are not medical experts and we're all speaking from personal or lived experiences. So anything we cannot comment or elaborate on any ongoing therapies or drugs. Last week, I think it worked really well that we had people put their questions into the chat, and then I will work them into conversation. So if you are unable to type or that communication style is not preferable for you, raise your hand and we will call on you and make it work that way. So we want to make sure everybody's voice is heard and they are part of the conversation. So with that, I would like to introduce Lynn. We'll let you start.
No, you want me to start? Okay, I'm Lynn Nieto and I'm Augie's wife.
Okay. Did Eric jump on and I didn't see him?
No, I'm here.
Sorry.
It's okay. Hi, I'm Eric Carlson.
Austin.
I'm calling from LA. I was the producer of the documentary Augie.
Okay, James.
I'm James Keach, and I, along with Eric, produced Augie and also directed it. And I'm in Malibu, California.
Did Austin hop on or no? We'll let him when he joins. Okay. So I will say I just watched the film, just finished it. I want it to be really raw and fresh on my own mind. And now I am very excited to go back and rewatch it after talking to you guys and having some insider knowledge and experience. One of my absolute favorite things throughout the whole film was the inappropriate humor. I'm part of a group called Her ALS Story, and we're all women diagnosed under the age of 35. And we cope very well with inappropriate humor. We're not quite at the porn email level that Augie discussed, but we're only in our second year, so there's plenty of room for growth. So I think my first question to you, Lynn, is we hear about in the film about the day he was diagnosed and the poor man on the shuttle with you guys. And most of us in that situation have a same kind of silly story or moment during our journey. Kind of talk to us about what was life like for you, or you and Augie, prior to the diagnosis and then pretty much immediately after.
Well, I have to, with full disclosure, say I don't have it in me to watch the documentary anytime soon, so it's been a while.
Okay.
And after Austin, for those of you that don't know, Austin is Augie's and my son. And we had a family call last week with our 4 kids, and he mentioned that he had watched the documentary over the weekend. And I said, so how was that to see that? And he said he was crying so hard he couldn't get his breath for about half an hour. So that kind of convinced me prior to this. I didn't think I would be up for this. So the question being, what was it like before? I think I was pretty, first of all, I didn't really want to do the documentary. Augie wanted to, so I'll preface it with that. And what I told Augie is if we were to agree to do that, that I was going to be very honest. And that was sort of the only way I felt like I could do that. And so in the documentary, I believe I said that we were not doing well as a couple. Augie had, sold or not sold, but left Life Fitness, was starting another company. It, after a year plus, it wasn't doing well. And as a couple, we weren't doing well. And honestly, I regretfully say today that I'm not certain we would have survived as a couple had we not had our ALS diagnosis. But one of the things that over the last 18, and I apologize that I'll get tearful tonight, but one of the things I'm most thankful for is I had him for 18 years with ALS, and we sorted it out. And we more than sorted it out. So that's, I'm not certain that completely answers your question, but.
No, it's, it's amazing, and it comes through on screen. Your love languages and your ability to work together. I think it was definitely very interesting to hear you talk about how you tried to be both a wife and a caregiver, and how you couldn't be both, and your relationship wouldn't withstand that. And for me, my marriage didn't withstand that. And so it's amazing to see you two come to a working agreement on camera, which is obviously made stronger by the hard work you guys put in off camera. It's inspiring, and it's amazing to see that love. For Eric and James, I think my first question to you guys is, what drew you into this story, into this project, and kind of how did the project evolve as you went along?
James, you want to take that, or you want me to take the first part? You take the second part?
Yeah, you take first.
Okay, so we were introduced to Augie by just by random. A good friend of ours that James and I had done another movie with. Actually, the summer that we met Augie was on a flight and met one of Augie's friends, and he actually sent her a script that Augie and a few of his buddies had financed to be written as a feature film, like a narrative film, not a documentary. And they asked us to read the movie, and James and I read the movie, and we said, well, he's an interesting man. This is a terrible script, right? And so we kind of reverse engineered, and we were asked to come down to Lynn and Augie's lovely home, and we wanted to meet Augie, and we went down and we met him. And James and I went down in the course of, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many of you knew Augie, and if you had the pleasure of meeting him, but he was a force to be reckoned with, and it was great. And James and I just kind of like fell in love with Lynn, and fell in love with Augie. And then he said, he goes, so when do we start? I mean, literally at the end of the conversation, I don't think James and I said much, right? You know, and we listened to his story, and then at the end of it, he goes, "Okay, can we start on Monday?" And James and I got back in the car. And goes, "Okay, I guess we're doing this movie," and that's kind of how it started. And then James had, and I'll let him take it, but then he had the challenge, which is, I'm sure a lot of people that are on the call tonight watch a lot of documentaries and movies, and documentaries are not like narrative films. There's no script to work off of. So James had the task of like, how do you find your way into this story? And as you've seen, most of you have seen the movie. It's a beautiful film. We're really proud of it. And he can talk to you about how he found his way into telling their story.
Yeah. Thanks, Eric. That was that you're absolutely right about when we first met Augie. There was no question that this man wanted it to be done. And what it inspired me was that he had taken, I think he'd written a book, From Success to Significance. And I felt that him wanting to tell the story, and as John Cash said to me when we were doing before Walk the Line, he said, "I want to tell the gnarly truth." And so that's what we set out to do. And I didn't know what ALS was. I didn't know really what Augie was faced with. And I was most touched by Lynn and what she was faced with, and the love story that these two people had. And as you said, Lynn, you said you were having a tough time before, and what happened is that this awful situation turned you both into advocates to help other people. It got you both out of yourself and into helping and supporting other people with the same illness. And the idea of starting a drug company and finding a cure. I mean, this was it was a fantastic story, and it was a story of can do as opposed to can't. And I found it very inspirational. So I don't know, documentaries are like peeling onions. You start peeling the outer layer and you just keep discovering the onion. It's like sculpting. You have the stone, you have the family, you have Lynn, you have Lynn's parents, you have Shannon, you have all the other folks that we got to meet that were suffering with ALS, both past folks that are no longer with us and present folks. And when you hear their stories, for me, it inspires. As a documentary, it changes your life. It changed my life. I don't know about you, Eric, but it changed my life and the way I looked at what I can do. Because and it also actually really, Augie inspired me to really get in shape. I know that might sound silly, but the guy, it was crazy what he was doing. And everybody said, you can't live through this. You can't do this. And as Lynn, you said, 18 years he did. And so it touched me, and I hope the film obviously touched other people, but it was a real privilege and an honor to work with everybody on it. And also, I think all of us, when faced, we're all going to face our mortality. And it's how you do it, And the way everybody faced their mortality in this was so courageous and inspirational for me. So.
Something you hit on, James, was the people that you met through it, and being in this space, having the opportunity to be in this space as long as Augie was. He knew, so many wonderful power players. I mean, to see the TDI from the Wayman perspective, or the Haywood perspective, all the way from the very beginning. It's just amazing to see all the benefits I'm reaping as a person living with ALS, because of the hard work and the collaboration of power players. And to see people that are no longer here. Pat Quinn was one of my favorite people. And when he jumped on screen, it was like, huh, there's my friend. And so I appreciate telling other stories and collaborating other people's perspectives into this documentary. What was the timeline as far as, okay, we're gonna start filming on Monday to when it was, released? What time frame were we talking about?
It was what, a year and a half or so, a little more than 18 months. I think it was a fairly quick process. I mean, documentaries
Was
are
it
very,
quick? You're kidding me. That was quick.
yeah, no, documentaries are,
Come down to get a cup of coffee and you're sitting on our couch like, where the
that's
hell
right.
did you come from?
Yeah, I mean, literally, it was like relatives you didn't want moved in, right? Like during COVID, and they just didn't leave. And, yeah, I mean, it was a fairly fast process for this, and most docs take a long time. James could talk a little bit about, he did the Glenn Campbell movie, and that was a much longer process because he followed Glenn during his last tour, and it turned into like what, close to 3 years. James, was that?
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention something about, because sometimes we don't know the effects of these kind of stories and what they do. So I just got back home like an hour ago, and we premiered a movie that I'm doing about Mary Tyler Moore in Michigan. And Mary Tyler Moore was diagnosed very early in life with type 1 diabetes, and she lost her sight, right? So the last 10, 12 years of her life. And so we screened this movie at the University of Michigan that houses her foundation. And it's called the Mary Tyler Moore Vision Initiative. And I didn't talk about Augie really at all, but it was in my bio on a program. And nobody asked me about it. I didn't speak about it at all on this panel that I was on. And then there was a reception afterwards. At least 25 people came up to me and had seen the film. And, some, had a family history of ALS, somebody in their family, somebody, they had lost from ALS, or they just liked the movie. And I was going to call James anyway later tonight and tell him about that. But it was like, it lived large, and I think because Augie was such a powerful character and he was such a powerful man, and the story was unusual, right? And so, Lynn's story was very unusual, and it just it hit a nerve with people. So I was really proud of that. It was like kind of, I mean, I was just kind of shocked. People knew the movie, and I was there with a prominent filmmaker who's done a ton of movies, and nobody asked her about her movies, but several people, just from seeing it, and it was just a line in the bio in the program, and they said, you were involved in that film, so it was nice. It was so I wanted to make sure Lynn heard that too. So it does live. People see it and they like it, and it resonates.
Awesome. Kind of along the same lines, Shannon and Lynn, what did this documentary mean for the organization? Kind of what was going on leading up to the release and the filming, and then kind of what happened after.
I'll throw that to you, Shannon. You're closer to that than I am.
I think that the documentary allowed us to share Augie's story in a way that we didn't have the ability to do. James and Eric put together this love story, this amazing, I didn't love Augie's inappropriate humor, but everybody else did. And it was really sharing Augie in the way that those of us that knew him well got to spend time with him when they watched the movie. So individuals that didn't know Augie well got to know him through that film, and James and Eric gave us that huge gift. I think it also Eric, all my Facebook memories are coming up where, I mean, we were all over doing the Nashville screenings. I know Andrea and David are doing that right now. So feels like you're gone the whole year, but being able to introduce Augie's story, which always leads to new donors and new people that have been engaged in that type of thing. But I do think what it really did is allow people to understand why we do what we do, who we are, and we still have people watching the movie, just like Eric said today, sharing the story, sharing our relationship with the ALS Therapy Development Institute, allowing us to do that in a documentary way was so much more powerful than anything we could tell people. And I think now, since we've lost Augie in February, we have a lot of people watching the movie for the first time and being introduced to Augie for the first time. So it lives on.
George put in the chat, something I really admired about Augie was his willingness to share the hard truths, be open with his struggles with ALS. Lynn, if you're up to it, can you share some of what motivated his openness? It meant a lot to me, and I appreciate all of you in Augie's quest has done to help find a cure for this terrible disease.
Well, if it didn't come out in the documentary, I think it had to have. Augie liked to be the center of attention. I mean, as he's kicking me underneath my desk right now, but he definitely was willing to put himself out there. And we would often have a conversation about, if not us, then who? Because he had a unique situation and that he had a lot of influence in the fitness industry, and then later in ALS community, that if he didn't do it, who was going to do that? And I mean, I'm gonna start crying. The shower scene in the documentary, I couldn't believe he would. I mean, this was a proud, fit, macho guy that allowed himself to be filmed in that situation. And so it reminds me about how brave he is, how brave he was, that he was willing to do that. Not in that case, not to be the center of attention, but to just kind of show the ugly truth of what this disease is.
That's powerful, and it definitely did come through in the conversations that he had and the people had around him, just how much everyone was learning together. In my notes I wrote down, I was thankful that you guys worked in the flying aspect of the documentary, because in our ALS story and just other people with ALS that I meet, their troubles, that's something they want to do and they're nervous about, or something that they love to do and now they don't know how to navigate. And so it kind of coming at it both from a need and a want when you're living on a shortened timeline, to see this, larger than life man just get sat on a commercial airplane, minus his tube for a few seconds. Well, he cussed out his friend in his head, but but just to see how it works, and not just talked about, actually to physically see the aisle share and the transfers and how to do that. I think that is so powerful for everyone to know how much thought and just extra steps it takes to do the daily stuff, the getting out of bed, the showering, all the way to the traveling. So I definitely appreciate you guys working that in there. That's something that comes up for us a lot. I feel like I'm talking a lot. Y'all throw questions in the chat. So it's not just me. Let's see. I loved how honest everyone was about describing it. I mean, you always like hear the jokes like, oh, they're just gonna say how nice I was. Like, nobody really just went over and above to blow smoke up his ass. Really, you know, who he was, how difficult he was to work for and be around sometimes, but how that relationship benefited them. I think that's a true mark of a friendship and of admiration, to it not just be all pleasantries and sweet sappy stuff. And the part of his friend talking, apologizing for not being there and putting his head under a pillow for a while. We all go through that. We're all going in ebbs and flows with relationships, and so to see it captured so just raw in a conversation was good to know. It's not just me and my relationships. Carol says, Eric and James, what are your favorite scenes and why?
James, do you want to go first?
Yeah, well, my favorite scenes were with Lynn. When you read the letters, that was very moving to me. My favorite scenes were when you and Augie were at the house, and you would interact with each other. And I think also one of my favorite scenes, I don't know if it's my favorite scene, but I think one of my favorite memories is the friendships that he'd had from the time he was in college all the way to through the making of the film, and how these men, women supported you guys, and the loyalty that obviously he had for them, but that they had for him. And I found that community very touching. And yeah, I remember that so well. And also some of I can't remember, one of the guys talking about how his wife gave him so much trouble about Augie sending his pictures and the porn list, and he finally said, I can't do this anymore. I'm in serious trouble. You have to stop this. And I just found it, it was so human and really fun. And I felt like that this was Augie's way of saying, I'm still alive. I feel, and I'm relevant as a man, and I'm connecting with you guys. And it always amused me, made me laugh. And I was on the list, of course. And I knew when Augie was not doing well, when the list stopped. I stopped getting texts, or emails. Yeah. So.
You know what? I think mine there were two scenes, and I missed the porn list too, right? It's like, I get pings at like 2:30 in the morning, and my wife go, "It's Augie." She wouldn't even know, who it was. She didn't even say it's like one of our adult children is like pinging it. I think Augie's pinging you. So I think my two favorite scenes are the first scene of the movie and the last scene of the movie. The first scene of the movie when he tells that joke, when there's a background that we shot him on a stage down in Orange County. Lynn and Augie came down and he talks about the guy that's with no arms and no legs that's trying to scratch his balls, right? And so and then he has that little grin that just, every time I saw that little kind of devilish 10-year-old boy was just, I loved it. It was great. And the last scene when I think it's the last scene before we pull out with the drone shot, James, right? There's a silhouette of him in front of the window looking out, you
Yep.
know,
On the boat.
over the
It's on the
ocean.
boat, yeah.
Yeah, and I love that scene. I love it. It's just so hopeful, you know, and that's kind of what he wanted out of this movie. So I think those were the two that kind of, you know, resonated with me the most. And there are things that, you know, there are parts of the movie you just look forward to seeing together, like, you know, when he walks your daughter down, when he's walking your daughter down the aisle, you know, those kind of, those are just, you know, great moments for me in the movie.
Shannon, Lynn, do you have any input on those? Or favorite
I was
scene?
just thinking about when Lynn was saying how Augie allowed himself to be so vulnerable. I thought maybe James and Eric and Lynn could talk about why they chose the poster they did for the movie, which is a shot of Augie in his underwear, where he's definitely looking all buff and fit. And I think he's probably, what, 17, 18, Lynn, but I think that's just such a funny, that's just so Augie. And maybe Lynn, you can tell about.
I have the poster in my office right here. That's signed by both of you guys. Well, first of all, it's Augie in his tighty whities, and he's probably in college. He said that I took the picture of him, but if I was in college, I would remember a picture taken like that, because that was back in the days you had film and you would have had to have taken it to the drugstore. I would have never have done that in a million years. Yeah, that was just so Augie. That is just so Augie. I'm looking at it right now.
We chose that because I wanted everybody to know who the Life Fitness guy was. This is who he was, and you know, also the story of how you guys met and how you fell in love, and then you went on to different. That part of the story is also fantastic. That you came apart and then came back together in life for this journey that you took together. But that picture of Augie, I wanted people to wonder, what is that? I don't know if anybody's aware that this film won the favorite audience award at the Nashville Film Festival.
Oh.
And that's because of the poster, because there were a bunch of young girls that came in there. I'm certain that's why.
You're probably right. Yeah. I think they also liked the humor in it. There was a lot of irreverent humor, you know, which yeah.
But what I like about the film, James and Eric, that you guys did is that when it got emotional, then you would put a funny joke in, so that when you were about ready to cry, you would laugh or be embarrassed, or something would come out that would make the emotions kind of change a little bit. So it was always a little ride.
We had so much stuff that we could have put in the movie too. I mean, the story of somebody stepping on his tube on the plane and nobody knew it, right? And because nobody was watching him, and the flight attendant had cut off his air supply. I mean, it was, and you know, he got upset. But kind of the best. I mean, you guys, I don't know if you want to hear a few of the stories, like, you know, while we were making it, but we showed him a cut early on in James's office, and there were about 8 or 9 of us in there. And the movie came on and we're kind of talking and nobody's paying attention to Augie. Even his caregiver had wanted to look at the movie, and Augie was crying so hard that it was, you know, it felt like he almost couldn't breathe, right? Do you remember that moment,
Yeah.
James? And then we all turned to him and started laughing. And, you know, it was kind of, it was a very sweet, I hope that he didn't, you know, wasn't suffering with that in the air, but he was. And then we all started laughing and he started laughing, and it was, you know, kind of a great moment. We had fun. I mean, this was fun making this movie. It was never, I mean, we felt we were intrusive, and I know we were, you know, to Lynn and Augie and their, you know, their privacy and stuff like that. But this was a fun movie. I mean, you know, you guys were great. You gave us carte blanche and, you know, let us in, and, you know, I hope that we were respectful of that. But this was a good experience. You know, I really look back on that year and a half together, and, you know, with such fond memories of making this movie.
I have to say, as much as I didn't want to do it, because I truly didn't, I'm an introvert. So that's, to be filmed is like your nightmare, right? I'm so happy I have that for my grandkids,
Hmm.
if nothing else, because they're not going to remember. They're all between the ages of 5 and 9. They're not going to remember Pops.
Hmm.
So it'll be a sweet thing for them to be able to see, maybe minus the humor, but when they get old enough, it'll be fine. They'll be good.
I love it. The Pete duo is asking, what was the toughest scene to leave on the cutting room floor? Any scenes you wish you could have included?
You remember one, James? That we wanted to put in, we didn't?
No, not really. I think Lynn spoke of the shower scene when we were doing that. That was a tough scene, and also having him wake up in the morning, shooting the scenes when he was waking up in the morning, and some of the stories that the caregivers told that we didn't put in the film about some of the troubles that he'd had at different moments, like if the electricity went out or something like that. But no, I think we put there's nothing on the floor that should have made the film. No, I feel like we put it all in there.
Let's see. George asked Shannon, Augie helped build TDI into one of the most respected research institutes in the world. Can you talk a little bit about that partnership?
Sure. Make sure I'm not on mute. My son just came home, so now it's loud. I think that we started Augie's Quest under the Muscular Dystrophy Association banner. And what was so important to Augie is to find a place to put the dollars that we were raising that was incremental, was different than what was happening, was a place that would spend it on the science, looking for a place that would basically focus on developing drugs for people currently living with ALS. He wasn't interested in basic science. He was very interested in translational research. So those were all things that Augie came to the table with probably on day 3, right in the very beginning. And we met a gentleman actually through a board member now, a friend of Augie's named Rob Roden, and also through the head of research at the Muscular Dystrophy Association, Sharon Hesterly, kind of at the both at the same time were introducing us to TDI. And we met with their then president, Sean Scott, who also had a very great sense of humor. I remember sitting in Augie's living room with Sean and Augie in the very beginning, talking about that we have to find a cure and that we can all work together to make that happen. So Augie wanted to put his money that we were raising at the place that would use it most effectively, most efficiently to find drugs and treatments for ALS. So that's where the partnership with ALS TDI came in. We had put some money and invested in some different things in the beginning, but we really felt that ALS TDI had the small team that was really focused just on ALS, no overhead, going towards big bricks and mortar or whatever it might be. It was really important to him. And we've been very proud of what we've been able to accomplish together. And we aren't going to stop till we do what Augie set out to do, just find a treatment and a cure.
I love that. And I love that everything that's happened since this film released, up until even today, what's happened in the ALS landscape as far as drugs coming out, as far as announcements directly from the lab, that continued partnership between you guys and ALS TDI. It's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, I wouldn't wish this diagnosis on anybody, but if you have to have ALS, now it's kind of the time to have it. And so, like, it's amazing to see where we've come just, you know, in a really short amount of time. Emily says, I want to say thank you to James and Eric for taking on the project and allowing the team at ALS TGI, who never got to meet Augie in person, to get to know the big boss in such a special way. And then also to Eric and James, what personality trait of Augie do you miss?
I don't know. I think, you know what? I think I didn't know Augie before he got sick, but he was incredibly kind. He was incredibly kind, you know, and I kind of missed that, you know. I missed, you know what was kind of funny, and I'm sure a lot of his friends have said this. I missed feeling kind of special around him. You know, I mean, I loved getting that porn list. I got to tell you, I'm not a degenerate, but I loved getting that porn list. It made me, I mean, there was some really like spit your coffee out of, you know, jokes on that porn list that would make me laugh all the time. And I love stupid, you know, teenage humor. And so I kind of miss that. I kind of miss having that kind of one-on-one and that kindness that I felt I always got from him. There wasn't a time that he wouldn't send one of us a note and thank us. You know, I mean, he would like thank us. You know, he went out and raised the money to go make this movie, and then we sold it to Hulu. I mean, he did all the work. He and, you know, his close friends and Lynn did all of the work. I mean, you know, James and I had a privilege to make the movie, but he was gracious and kind, you know, so that's what I miss. James.
Yes. Oh, yes.
You
What
too. They were asking, I think they were asking both of us.
Yeah. I think what I miss so much is his acceptance of who he was as a person, as a man, and what had happened to him in his life, and that you got to press on. That it's life isn't it's not a dress rehearsal, you know. He engaged every day, and it also impressed me how much he loved Lynn and his kids and his family. I mean, it was the way he looked at her when we were filming in the den, the living room where the TV is, and we were filming in there, and I just would photograph Augie, the look on his face, the way he looked at you when you were talking, and the pride that he had for you and for his children, and the scene when you decided, when you revealed if it's a little boy or a little girl, and the look on his face, and the look on his face and the courage that he had when he walked down the aisle. He just inspired me, you know. He just, you know, it was no poor me anymore when I was around Augie. It was, no, man, he's a lion. And he inspired me. What can I say?
Glenna says, Lynn, first let me tell you how sorry I am for your loss. I want to thank you for consistently saying our diagnosis, and we were diagnosed. It truly is a family diagnosis. What would you tell a newly diagnosed spouse or caregiver?
Well, often speak to newly diagnosed spouses. If you can get a caregiver, if you can afford a caregiver. First of all, let me say, Augie and I always knew we were the lucky ones in this disease. We had the means to have help. We were so stupid in the beginning because we were both so just stubborn that, you know, we didn't need help and we could do it ourselves. And, you know, it almost destroyed our marriage. So that would be probably the first thing. And for those of us that talk to newly diagnosed people or their spouses or caregivers, is if you can do that, And if you can afford to do that, and most people can't, so I don't want to, put my head in the sand, but if you can, allow yourself to be the spouse. Allow yourself, or at least it's so different. My experience was when Augie would get upset with me, I'm half his weight, dropped him into a chair, not my fault, trying my hardest. He's upset because he's frustrated and hurt. And I mean, it's like you talk about the thing that can destroy a marriage, man. I mean, it's horrible. And so that would be probably the first thing I would say is if it's feasible, and, at least get a break, because also on my side of it, I wasn't sleeping, so I'm certain I was at my best, right? Not to try to care for the family as a unit, and not just the person that is living with the disease, because it's affecting everyone in the whole unit. And for all of us to be mindful of that, in the same way, just recently as Augie passed, I had to be really mindful. I'm not the only one mourning, and everybody's doing it in their own way, and being just really thoughtful about that.
Wow. Wow. Bert asks, curious how the producers and family prepared to document this film. Did you watch so much so fast, and or other documents that highlight living with ALS?
I didn't watch anything. I read some books. There was nothing really to watch. That and we just went into I wanted to know who Augie was before this movie, and because, as Eric said, we didn't meet Augie until he had ALS and he was communicating with his toe, and I mean. So, and the way to get to know Augie is to get to know his friends. That's why I was so inspired by the loyalty of his friends, and the love of his wife, and the respect and love of his children, and his brothers, and there, so the whole idea of discovering Augie was through other people, and then watching his behavior and the way he interacted with them. So that's how he was revealed, through the eyes of others, through his books, through his friends, through some home videos of him, some crazy stuff of him going off of buildings, or, I mean, he was a daredevil. And but that's a lot of times how documentaries are made, is through archival materials, and then reflections from other people. And as a filmmaker, it's discovery. It's this, you discover him and the way he and through his porn. No, just kidding. He did have some funny jokes. Then and we chose the tamest ones for the film. Believe me, there were some real doozies. Anyway, yeah. I still to this day, I mean, I know there was a narrative film script made, and when at the ceremony, at the when Augie's friends all gathered for a memorial, I was sitting there. I just keep thinking, as a filmmaker, this is a great story. It's a fantastic story, and hopefully the film will live on. And I just think that, I don't know how you feel about it, Eric, but I still feel that this would make a fantastic movie.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, it is a great love story, and it is a great love story, I mean, just to just add to what James was saying, I mean, we got to see some home movies, so we got a little bit of a peek into it, right? And so much of it was, just kind of finding our way as we went. but, you know, we got a sense of kind of the guy in the Ferrari, right? We didn't get a real sense of Augie. We met him one time. I mean, this happened quickly in the beginning, which to make movies, it never happens like this. Never. You know, it's a very, very long process, right? And so we got to see him in the beginning. And I remember there was one point where James and I went, this guy may be a little bit of a dick. You know, this guy may, you know, okay, all right. So that, and then James, to his credit, went, that's the movie. That's, you know, so it was kind of, we got both sides of him. So we got to see him in his, you know, in his previous, you know, early years as a young adult and building a successful business and stuff. And then, you know, we didn't know him as that character, but it was great to see it, you know. And they had a lot of stuff. They had a lot of pictures, a lot of stuff, a lot of news articles about him and business journals and things like that. So we got to look at all of that stuff early on.
I think it was definitely inspiring to see how dedicated he was to making his ALS journey about his story, and whether that was adapting you know, communication devices to his personal use and needs, to where he's working out with his trach. I mean, like, just, you know, here's what the textbook says and fuck that. Like, I'm gonna do what's gonna give me the best quality of life. And that came across so strongly in every aspect of the film. Megan says, how did Augie reflect on this film? Did he ever consider doing a part 2, or was there more available to make a second movie from what you filmed?
I
So
can
you
answer
wanted-
that. Augie would have killed to have a narrative film done.
I always think when we watch the film for the first time, James, up in your screening room, and Augie looked at Lynn and he goes, damn, it should have been called Lynn instead of Augie.
I married a salesman, just in case you didn't realize that. I married a salesman.
Yeah.
Augie loved the movie. I think what was really hard for him is that with how his ALS had progressed, it was tough for him to travel. So when James and Eric and Lynn and I were getting to go all over the country to film festivals, he did not join on most of those trips. And I know he, you know, wanted to be there so bad.
He did, as I remember, he did come to a couple, right? He went to like the one in Newport Beach, and then
Yeah, Newport was the only one he got to
is
go
that the
to.
only one? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was great. And the other part of that question is there's not enough footage to make a part 2. There, you know, everything was kind of used in, you know, the whole completion of that film. So there's not a lot of footage that would kind of make a story again. It would kind of be telling the same story over.
Well, I think the iPhone lives that we live now, where there's so many videos, we didn't have those of Augie when he was growing up. So it was, you know, didn't have a lot of the footage, had a lot of photos. Whereas some folks now that are putting documentaries together, there's all these, I have so many videos of my son growing up that are just living on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
Lana says, thank you for making such a beautiful film. I appreciate you all so much. When I'm in awe of the courage it took you and Augie to put yourselves and your story out there to help others understand this disease better.
Appreciate that.
Well, and kind of to that, as we're wrapping up on an hour, I want to be mindful of everybody's time. James, Shannon, Lynn, Eric, thank you so much for being here tonight. Could you each kind of leave us with either what you hope we can take from this movie or what you hope we can do with this movie.
I can start. I think that when Augie left his body 2 months ago, I promised him we wouldn't stop because we've worked so hard for 18 years. And to stop now would be just such a horrible, I don't know what the right word is. It would be like not honoring his wishes. And so therefore, I think we all collectively, it's not just me, but collectively, we need to continue to support TDI to just make certain that the mission is accomplished and we ultimately get to where Augie had seen us going 18 years ago. And so if anything, if the documentary can kind of be able to shed some light on what we're doing, albeit it's 5 years old now or over 5 years old, but that we continue on, and it's not something that dies with Augie, because it can't. We can't let that happen.
You know, I hope it's used. I hope that people see it and they open up the purse strings. I want this to like be a tool for sustainable giving, you know. And so, and we've seen a lot of films that have done that well, you know, and this has done it well, and I hope it continues to do it for a long time, you know. I mean, Augie, he becomes there in the movie, right? So even though he's not with us anymore, he becomes there in the movie. And I hope people kind of get inspired by that and kind of, we use this movie through my lifetime and, through generations, hopefully that people will do it, and give because they see it, because they're inspired by him. So that's my wish.
I would agree with Eric. That's my wish too. But like I said, when I was at the memorial and Mitch was speaking, I kept thinking to myself, is there some way where we can continue instead of a part 2? Is there some way that we might be able to turn this into the narrative film that he wanted to have made? And so I've been thinking about it ever since. In fact, I came up to Mitch, who's a fine writer. I said, have you ever written a feature film? And of course he laughed at me. I guess the Weekends with More, he'd written a few, but I'm saying this specifically to Lynn and Shannon. If there's interest out there in support getting a screenplay, I think it would have a shot, to be a very inspirational story. And that's what I'd like to see the story continue. Not just be in the documentary, but to continue. That would be my wish.
And to grant Augie's wish that George Clooney play him.
No, it wasn't George Clooney. Who was the other guy?
Well, I thought it was
the
Clooney,
dancer guy.
Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman. That's right. Hugh Jackman. That's right.
Yeah,
George Clooney. Augie is not a George Clooney lookalike at all.
Well, Hugh Jackman certainly has the figure, the body, and also, he's and a very charismatic guy, as Augie was, So that's that's my wish.
I'm going to tell Augie that tonight. I talked to him at night, so I'm going to let him know you said that.
Okay, you give him love. Okay,
I will.
Shannon?
I feel like they said it best, but I think something that Eric brought up, Augie made me feel very special all the time up until the last day. And if we can leave anything, is live like Augie did. Make people feel special, be loyal, do the right thing. kind of live the way that Augie lived and treat people the way he treated those in his circle. We are very privileged to be part of his life. So, and I think that the movie can share that as well too. So, and no pressure, Eric. Let's get Hugh Jackman to play Augie.
Sign us up. I copied something out of the obituary, which, or it may have been from Fernando's statement. It says, in Augie's own words, please keep me in your hearts. Please help continue the progress of Augie's quest to cure ALS. Please help Lynn to carry on the mission, the second finest achievement of my life, because I will be there in your heart. I will get to experience the joy when we discover a cure. And that just summed it up for me. If you weren't in love with them then, now I am for sure. So well, thank you guys. Thank you so much for being here, for being vulnerable, for being part of this conversation, and just for continuing the quest, Augie's quest to find a cure, and for not stopping. We all appreciate you so very much. So thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Sonia,
you,
for
guys.
doing this. That's really, you're doing an awful lot by putting this together. So thank you.
Yeah. It's been fun. We're learning a lot of deep dark secrets from people we love. I don't have the info in front of me. When do we meet next?
May 14th at, I believe, 4 p.m. Eastern time, but let me double check. And everybody who's registered tonight, remember that you will get information for the next 3 films as well. So you will get the Zoom information a couple hours before, and we hope to see you on all of our amazing discussions. And if you miss any, just like this one, it will be recorded and you will be able to watch it back whenever you want, or you can share it with a friend. We really appreciate everyone who has joined us this evening, and thank you all for being here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having
Good
us.
week, everybody.